Hi everyone. Today I wanted to talk to you about some tools I have in my toolbox, and one of the most useful ones. Now, everybody I think knows that you can use a chopstick for sort of straightening out your roots or doing some digging in your pots. And it's a great tool, but you may not have a set of chopsticks laying around your house. And what's even better than a pair of chopsticks, this is my favorite, one of my favorite tools. It's just a 3/8 inch diameter dowel, and with a point on one end and a little sort of wedge shaped taper on the other end. And this has really helped me to both loosen up roots using the pointy end and moving around soil with the tapered end. I use this all the time. You can even see that the tip is starting to get worn out. I need to sharpen that up probably a little bit. But while it's getting to be the time of the year when you're just sitting around indoors, maybe during winter, and not much to do in your garden while you're sitting around watching football, you can make a few tools very cheaply yourself. So here's the equivalent one that I've made out of a wooden chopstick that you get out of the takeout restaurants. So again, it's got a sharp, pointy tip on it, and on the other side it has a little tapered edge that you can do digging with. And I like to cut it off at a little bit of a slant, just so when I'm working I can get a flat edge on the work. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to make this. I mean, I'm sure you can figure out yourself, but just in case, I'll walk you through it. So here's a takeout chopstick. This is from Din Tai Fung. You should go there. It's a great place to eat. Really like their the cucumbers and the dumplings. So that's what you get. And notice, by the way, that these are, they're a little bit flat. I don't know if you can tell that or not. But you can also use round ones. I like the flat ones because it gives you kind of a better grip when you're holding it. So we'll just take that, break that in two, so you can get two out of that. And you'll notice that the tip is sort of squared off there. I really like it to be a little bit pointier to get in between the roots. So we're going to sharpen that up, and then we're going to cut a taper on this side. That's a kind of a block here, but it's already nice and squared off. So this makes for a great starting point for the tool. So to cut that, so here's my other one of my other favorite tools in my toolbox is just a standard utility knife. This is what I use to cut the bark off my air layers. And there's a couple things that I like about it. One is that if your blade gets dull, it's easy to just replace the blade. You don't have to go and sharpen it. And of course, these are not the sharpest tools, but I think they do the job well enough. And there's so many handy uses for them that, you know, you could keep your grafting knife around, but I think for your general purposes, this is really hard to beat. The one thing I would have liked is if the blade was a bit longer, but I'm willing to sacrifice that for just the ease of use. So we'll take your normal hobby knife here, utility knife, and the first thing we'll do is we'll just cut a pointy end on here, and you can just do that carefully. We'll just scrape around. So I guess you shouldn't be doing this when you're watching football, but you can do it in between during the commercial breaks. Just be aware you're going to be leaving wood shavings around that you'll have to clean up later. Okay, so the first thing about this, it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, you don't have to get it to a perfect symmetrical point. Just enough that you get a taper. And I'll show you what that looks like in a bit. And at this point, you don't have to get to a sharp point either, because we'll take care of that. Okay, so there you go. Let's cut a little point on it. And this would be good enough. You don't really have to do anything more than that, but I like to take a bit of sandpaper. That's 100, but it could be anything really. And let's see if I can show you this a little bit better here. So I'm just going to take it, and I'm just going to, as I rotate it, I'm going to just pull it until I kind of get a nice taper there. Okay, I think that's not the most beautiful, but that will do the trick. So you can see the point went there. And if you want to get picky about it, I think that's 220. You can take a little piece and just work it like that. Okay. So that does, oops, sorry, that does the trick there. And so now you instantly have a nice point. It might not be as tapered as your chopstick, but that's certainly going to do the job. Just for fun, here's some other things you can use. Now, some of you might know what this is. I bet some of you have never seen this before. That is a manual pencil sharpener. And you could even use that. You could stick it in there. You could try this. In fact, here, I'm going to try this. Hang on just a second. Okay, there you go. There's it, not quite centered well, but that was about 500 times faster. So if you wanted to, if you have one of those, I don't necessarily recommend you stick it in an electric pencil sharpener because it's not worth damaging your electric pencil sharpener for this task. Okay. So that's the pointy end. So let's go ahead and deal with the back end of this. And so really what you can do, you know, I'd say it's fine to just cut off of one side. It would be non-symmetrical, but it's going to be a lot easier. You can see on this one, I centered up the taper so it was in the middle of it, but I don't think you need to do that. So let's see. So I'm going to start, let's see where the flat part is. I'm going to start a little bit beyond where the flat part starts. I'm going to just shave it down. Just be careful. My dad and my grandpa used to whittle things toward them, but I don't think it's worth doing it that way and risk cutting your fingers. I've done that enough unintentionally. Okay. Okay, you know, I think I am going to cut the other side just to make it so it'll go a little bit faster. So I'll start on the other side. Okay, again, not the most symmetrical, but this will work, right? Okay, so you can see here, I've cut that down, and now there's a sort of a taper here. I don't know if you can see that well. Okay, and you could clean it up if you want. I just wouldn't go too narrow down at the base, so it stays a bit stronger. All right, and I can do the same thing. Take my piece of sandpaper and just work it. Take off any splinters. And I can work it with a little piece here. Okay, I think that's fine. Now, I like it with a little taper. You can leave it cut off straight, or you can put a rounded edge on it, but I'm just going to put a straight taper. Like that. And I'll just hit it with sandpaper. There you go. Now you too, if you do this, will have one of the most useful tools that you can put in your toolbox, and it'll help you in the spring or late winter when you start trying to loosen up the roots. I did want to tell you a little trick I learned, and this is from fishing, that a lot of times you'll try and pull the roots out or detangle the roots, and people will stick them in there and just pull, you know, just jab and pull, jab and pull. What I found from fishing is if you're trying to untangle a knotted mess of fishing line, that you don't want to yank it because you're just going to pull the knots tight. So what you want to do is you want to stick your tool in and wiggle it, and kind of maybe in a slightly circle, but back to back, and work it through this way. So you stick it in, wiggle. So basically you're trying to loosen the roots apart on their own, so when you pull it, it doesn't pull into a tighter bind. So I always tell, so you kind of wiggle, wiggle and pull, wiggle and pull. We call it what I call the shabu shabu motion. So if you know Japanese food, shabu shabu is a dish that you throw the meat and vegetables into a kind of a hot boiling soup, and you shake it around. So we call that motion shabu shabu. So you go shabu shabu, shabu shabu. Okay. A couple other things. So I do like this big one. This is 3/8. Just a little bit easier to hold, and sometimes better for bigger roots. You can buy dowels like this at places like Hobby Lobby or any other kind of hobby store. These are 3/8" dowels. And basically you're going to do the same thing, except you're making it out of a piece of wood dowel instead of a chopstick. So now you're starting to spend a bit more money. The other thing, a couple other things, you can always use handy X-Acto knife instead of your utility tool. Sometimes that's a little bit sharper, but the utility knife works fine. And because these are so inexpensive, if if it gets worn out, you just throw it away and make a new one. But if you're really intent about things like keeping your tools clean and you want to protect them, you can always wipe it down, say with a coat of like polyurethane. Let that dry, and then you'll have a nice waterproof thing, and it won't get ingrained with dirt like when you just have plain wood. So those are my tips for you. I hope you found that useful, and you can certainly make these all winter and give them away to your friends basically for free. So, all right, have a good one, and we'll see you next time. Bye.